This Sunday, chaos, fear, and desperation in Afghanistan.
If we go outside, of course they will kill us.
As U.S. troops struggle to restore order at Kabul's airport.
They run behind you with the AK-47, and they pong, 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 pong.
President Biden defends his decision.
The idea that somehow there's a way to have gotten out without chaos ensuing, I don't know how that happens.
And makes this promise.
Let me be clear. Any American who wants to come home, we will get you home. Push backwards! Push backwards!
But the U.S. is relying on the Taliban to allow safe passage of Americans and our allies.
This is all on President Biden.
My guest this morning, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan and Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming. Plus our new NBC News poll. New numbers on President Biden's approval rating, his handling of COVID, the economy in a deeply divided country. Also, kids, schools, and COVID. Cases rising nationwide.
The situation is dire, and we are simply out of time.
And with more and more children now falling ill,
critically ill children.
Local school districts are pushing back against statewide bans on mask mandates.
These school boards are having to essentially protect kids from their own governors.
I'll talk to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona about the fight over masking children. Joining me for insight and analysis are NBC News Chief Washington Correspondent Andrea Mitchell, Stephen Hayes, founder of The Dispatch, Helene Cooper, Pentagon Correspondent for The New York Times, and Leo Shane, Deputy Editor of Military Times. Welcome to Sunday. It's Meet the Press.
From NBC News in Washington, the longest-running show in television history, this is Meet the Press with Chuck Todd.
Good Sunday morning. We're going to get right to it. 1 week after the Taliban took total control of Kabul, the crisis at the city's airport remains a scene of chaos and panic. Fearful crowds are now being harassed and menaced by Taliban fighters. They're still desperately trying to get into the airport and out of Afghanistan. And now, on top of all of this, there's an ISIS threat against Americans in the area as well. So we're going to get right to our chief foreign correspondent, Richard Engel. He's been covering this, obviously, was in Kabul, now in Doha, Qatar, where a lot of these planes from Kabul are landing. Richard, who's landing? Who's making it out?
Nobody really knows. People who could get onto the base could convince the Marines that they had a sympathetic case. Some have paperwork, some don't. Some do not. Some are unaccompanied minors. It is really a mixed bag, and that is part of the problem here. That this was initially supposed to be evacuation for very limited people, for American citizens, foreign contractors, foreign nationals, and those who worked with American troops and who were at risk. But now there is total panic in Kabul. People are rushing to that base. So it is very, very difficult because you have really half a base that is trying to do this evacuation plan, this extraction plan, to try and pull out the people that the United States wants to pull out. But also so many others are flooding in at the same time.
Richard, do we have any idea how many more people who should be getting out, American citizens and our allies, are left to be gotten out? Do we have a good idea of what number that is?
Not really. Thousands, certainly. The State Department has lists, but a lot of people in Kabul were not done filling out their forms, were never able to fill out their forms. There are a lot of people in Afghanistan who think they should qualify because they worked in some sort of peripheral way for the Americans. So there are many, many people who qualify to get out. And then you have, I think pretty soon it'll be millions of people in Kabul who are trying to get out, trying to rush to that half of a base. Right. So is it surprising that there is a threat against them from ISIS, this very extremist group? They're telling them all to congregate in one place. They need another staging area.
That's for sure. And then some, and perhaps more troops. Richard Engel in Doha, Qatar for us. Richard, glad you got out. Look, politicians from both parties and four administrations have their fingerprints on America's 20-year Afghanistan policy. But it is now President Biden who has become the face of this disastrous withdrawal. We have a new NBC News poll taken as Americans were witnessing this chaos in Kabul. Among all adults, Mr. Biden's approval rating stands at a fairly mediocre 49%. 48% disapproving. In our polarized politics, that isn't the end of the world. But if you compare it to last April, when the numbers were 53% approved, 39% disapproved, you start to see some erosion. Now, not surprisingly, approval of Mr. Biden's handling of the situation in Afghanistan, as we're watching all this, is extremely low, just 25%. But the president's overall slippage is less about Afghanistan than about two other issues. Approval of his handling of the coronavirus is down a whopping 16 points, just 53% approved now from 69 in April. And approval of his handling of the economy is standing at 47%. That's upside down now because it was at 52. Mr. Biden has weeks to set things right in Afghanistan and more than 3 years until the next presidential election. But let's be honest, with headlines like this one in The Economist, the human tragedy at the end of this forever war is threatening to be a forever stain on Mr. Biden's presidency.
But let me be clear. Any American who wants to come home, we will get you home.
President Biden defending the chaotic U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan.
We have no indication that they haven't been able to get in Kabul through the airport. We've made an agreement with the Taliban thus far. They've allowed them to go through.
I can say definitively that that is completely untrue.
David Fox is an American still in Afghanistan.
The only way that you can actually get to the U.S. Marines is by fighting your way in. Just by pure physical, brutal force.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told lawmakers Friday that Americans trying to leave Afghanistan have been harassed and even beaten by Taliban fighters. And it's not clear how many Americans remain in Afghanistan.
We don't have a perfect figure of how many are in Afghanistan, let alone Kabul. If you're an American and you're at a gate, you will be let in that gate.
Thousands of Afghans continue to crowd the airport, barred from entering by Taliban shooting, flashbangs, and whips.
They run behind you with the AK-47 and they pong, 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 pong.
The U.S. says it will bring up to 22,000 Afghans to the United States and facilitate more to other countries. The International Rescue Committee estimates more than 300,000 Afghan civilians have been affiliated with the United States mission since 2001.
If you go outside, of course they will kill us.
I'm old enough to remember Saigon. This is a lot worse than Saigon in 1975.
But despite the president's claims,
I have seen no question of our credibility from our allies around the world.
Some U.S. allies are criticizing the president and questioning America's role in the world.
This is a catastrophe.
To see their commander-in-chief call into question the courage of men I fought with, to claim that they ran. It's shameful.
This is a shame on all of us, not just America, but also the whole of NATO.
President Biden ran on competence and good judgment. How much will the chaos in Afghanistan erode his standing? While just 25% of Americans approve of his current handling of Afghanistan, Americans are still sour on the war overall, 61% saying it wasn't worth it.
Send your sons, your daughters, like my son was sent to Iraq, to maybe die. And for what? For what?
And joining me now is President Biden's National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan. Mr. Sullivan, welcome to Meet the Press.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start with the security situation around the airport in Kabul. It appears to be deteriorating, and there's now a threat from ISIS of terror attacks against Americans. Is the administration considering sending more troops to try to secure the perimeter and secure the area?
At the moment, we believe we have sufficient forces on the ground, but every single day the president asks his military commanders, including those at the airport and those at the Pentagon, whether they need additional resources, additional troops. So far, the answer has been no, but he will ask again today.
How many Americans are trying to get out of Afghanistan? This has been a question that you've been asked numerous times, and we haven't known the answer. And this Sunday morning, do we know the answer?
Well, we know that it's roughly a few thousand, Chuck, but let me explain to the American people why we don't exactly know. Because when people come to Afghanistan who are American citizens, we ask them to register with the U.S. Embassy. Many leave and never deregister, or others come and choose not to register in the first place. Of course, as Americans, that's their right. So we have been working for the past few days to get fidelity on as precise a count as possible. We have reached out to thousands of Americans by phone, email, text, and we are working on plans to, as we get in touch with people, give them direction for the best and most safe and most effective way for them to get into the airport.
And about our Afghan allies, how many are you committed to getting out of the country?
Just yesterday, Chuck, we flew out a total of, or facilitated the flight out of 7,800 people, 3,900 on U.S. military aircraft, 3,900 on charter aircraft that our military facilitated from private organizations in other countries. Since the beginning of this evacuation, it's been 30,000 people total. Since August 14th, it's been 25,000. We're going to continue that in the days ahead and get out thousands more Afghans who are at risk and or who supported the U.S. military effort in Afghanistan, along with continuing to ensure that we are focused on getting American citizens out who want to leave the country.
I want to understand this August 31st deadline because this is what the president said on Friday about a so-called agreement with the Taliban. I want to play it.
We have no indication that they haven't been able to get in Kabul through the airport. We've made an agreement with the Taliban thus far. They've allowed them to go through. It's in their interest for them to go through.
All right. I want to understand this agreement with the Taliban. What is this agreement and what was agreed to?
So the agreement with the Taliban, which is produced and reinforced daily through contacts in military channels on the ground in Kabul, is that American citizens get passage to the airport, get the opportunity to pass through any checkpoints on the way to the airport, and then it's our responsibility to get them inside. One of the challenges, as you know, Chuck, has been that once arriving at the airport, the three main gates coming into the airport have been crowded with large numbers of Afghans, just ordinary Afghans who want to get on a plane out of the country. And so we've been spending the last period working out various operational solutions to get Americans onto the airbase. We are continuing to work with the Taliban to ensure that any American who faces any challenge getting from their home to the airport, that gets resolved, that they be able to have safe passage, and then it's up to us to get them inside the airport. That's what we're doing now.
It seems, though, that Americans are getting harassed by the Taliban, and our allies are getting harassed by them. What's the fallout for the Taliban if they're reneging on this agreement?
If in the end Americans are blocked from getting to the airport, blocked from leaving the country, or our operations are disrupted, or our evacuations are in some way interfered with, we have explained to them that there will be a swift and forceful response.
What does the Taliban get in return if you believe they've upheld this agreement that you guys have negotiated with them?
This isn't some kind of quid pro quo. We haven't made any commitments. We have laid out our expectations. We have explained to them that the United States of America intends to evacuate any American who wants to leave, as well as Afghans at risk. We intend to follow through on that, and we intend to ensure that they follow through on that.
Look, there's a lot of after-action reports that are going to come out. There's going to be a lot of this fallout. But it seems that the core mistake here, it appears, in your withdrawal plan, was pulling the military out before the civilians and before our allies. Why did the military get withdrawn before the civilians? Does that, in hindsight, that looks like just a catastrophic mistake.
Which civilians are you referring to, Chuck?
Our American diplomats, the Americans to get out, our Afghan allies, all the people we wanted to get out. Why did we withdraw the military and our military support before we could get that out? Why did we hand over Bagram before we got these people out?
Let me start with our diplomats, because the plan from the beginning was to sustain a U.S. diplomatic presence in Kabul after our military departed. That was the plan from the beginning, and because we believed that if necessary, we could draw down our embassy presence in a crisis and get all of our diplomats out. We had a plan in place to do that. We did that. With respect to American citizens in Kabul, we began messaging them months ago, telling them that the situation was deteriorating and that they should leave the country. We explained to them that if they didn't have the financial resources to be able to leave the country, those resources would be provided to them. Many chose to stay right till the end, and that, of course, was their choice. And then what we did was made sure that we had a plan in place with the president ordering 3 military battalions pre-positioned in the Gulf to be able to fly in and secure that airfield so that those American citizens could be evacuated. We are doing that now. And finally, when it comes to Bagram, the best military advice that we received was that, number one, Bagram is an immense facility that would be difficult to secure over time and put our troops at risk. And second, it didn't logistically make sense from an evacuation perspective because it is located outside of Kabul, and both American diplomats, American citizens, and most of the Afghans at risk live inside of Kabul. That is the reason for Bagram, which was the recommendation offered to the president by his national security experts at the Pentagon and elsewhere. So
you followed the military advice on closing Bagram, but the same military advisors were telling you to keep a force on the ground. They told you not to pursue this withdrawal agreement with the Taliban, correct?
There are strategic judgments that a president makes, and there are tactical judgments that you give absolute premium to the commanders on the ground to make. If a commander on the ground says, I need this resource or this move to accomplish my mission or keep my people safe, you weigh that very heavily. But when it comes to the fundamental question of whether the United States should remain in a civil war in Afghanistan with American men and women fighting and dying for a third decade, that is a presidential call, not a call by anyone at the Pentagon or the State Department or the intelligence community.
The president said on Monday you planned for every contingency. If this is a plan, it doesn't look like it's been well thought out. Did you really plan for this contingency, or is this the one contingency you didn't plan for?
You know, Chuck, I know that the scenes around the airport are heartbreaking. Large crowds of people wanting to leave. I know that there is complexity and there is turbulence on the ground in Kabul. And it's very risky and dangerous because there's a genuine threat from ISIS-K. That is the reality of what we are up against. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that reality. But Chuck, let's just review what has happened. A week after Kabul fell, we have 30,000 people evacuated from the country. We have control of an airport in a city controlled by the other side after the collapse of the government. We are moving people through and out, thousands of people at a time. We have agreements with 26 nations around the world to logistically move Afghans and Americans and third country nationals out of the country into air bases throughout neighboring countries and further afield. All of that within 7 days. No plan survives first contact with reality. No plan can account for every contingency that occurs at a tactical level on a day-to-day basis. What you do is you adjust, and we've adjusted, and while we are continuing to face genuine challenges, we believe we are making progress.
Jake Sullivan, National Security Advisor to President Biden, I appreciate you coming on and sharing the administration's perspective. Good luck.
Thanks for having me, Chuck.
And joining me now is Republican Congresswoman Liz Cheney of Wyoming. Congresswoman Cheney, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Thank you, Chuck.
Look, I know you disagree with the withdrawal decision sort of overall, but let's focus short term here for a moment. The National Security Advisor did say if the president gets advice that more resources are needed to get Americans out, then he would be open to that. Given the situation, should that be the next course of action?
We have to ensure that we get every American out, and we have to ensure that we get out the Afghans who helped us. That's our duty. That's our responsibility. As you pointed out, Chuck, what we're watching unfold on the ground is a complete catastrophe. And to hear the National Security Advisor say, well, it's a little complexity, a little turbulence, or to suggest this is simply a civil war is fundamentally at odds with reality. Our mission in Afghanistan was to deny terrorists a sanctuary. And the Biden decision now to completely withdraw has handed them an entire country, has in fact ensured not just the Taliban, but al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Haqqani network, terrorist organizations that want to attack the United States now have an entire country as a sanctuary from which to do so.
Is the Taliban a direct threat to the United States or not? That has been a dispute. What makes you say that?
Absolutely. Well, we know, the facts make me say it. We know that the Taliban has never renounced al-Qaeda. And this is one of the things that was such an indefensible step by the Trump administration when President Trump and Secretary of State Pompeo decided that they were going to sign a surrender agreement with the Taliban, decided they were going to begin to negotiate with the
President Trump's own National Security Advisor. I was going to actually play that clip for you. H.R. Haldeman.
McMaster.
McMaster. I've done that a few times. Been around this town too long, I guess. And he basically accused Secretary of State Pompeo at the time and the president, and he called it a surrender agreement.
It is.
Why do you call it a surrender agreement?
Absolutely. Because we sat down and negotiated with terrorists because we completely excluded the Afghan government from those negotiations. We gave credibility to the Taliban. Secretary Pompeo told us that the Taliban was going to renounce al-Qaeda. They told us that the Taliban was going to fight terrorists. They forced the Afghan national government, we did, to release 5,000 prisoners. So we completely undercut the Afghan national government. We absolutely emboldened the Taliban. And we know now from public reporting that at the moment that agreement was signed, the Taliban went to members of the Afghan National Army and said, the Americans are leaving you, and you should lay down your arms when the time comes, or we'll kill you and your families. So that led directly to the catastrophe that we're seeing today.
Do you think President Biden could have gotten out of that agreement? He feels as if that it would have been that we'd have paid a high price, maybe even with more attacks on our soldiers on the ground.
I think there's no question. You know, President Biden is the president of the United States, and he's had no problem in reversing course on other things. He decided he's going to rejoin the JCPOA. He decided he's going to rejoin the Paris Climate Accord. He's reversed a number of decisions of the Trump administration. So in this circumstance where absolutely the U.S. national security requirement was to maintain a presence on the ground, to help to, frankly, embolden and train the Afghans who were bearing the brunt of this and fighting for us, President Biden ignored the advice of his military leadership and decided instead he's going to withdraw. And all you have to do is look at what is unfolding today. Look at that interview we just heard. The fact that we're now somehow relying on the Taliban to protect Americans, and the White House is denying what we know is happening on the ground, which is that Americans are being beaten, they're being prevented from getting to the gates of the airport, and they are probably being held hostage.
10 years ago, we had a poll that showed over 70% of Americans thought that we were more likely that this is going to end without being able to leave a stable democracy in Afghanistan. In some ways, the American public sort of foresaw this a decade ago. The American public now, even as they don't like what they see on the ground, 60% say this isn't worth it. That seems to be why there's no political support with 4 presidents in a row have tried to get out because the public's not been with them. Isn't that fundamentally why we're getting out?
You know, I think I actually look at it the other way, Chuck, that we need to have leaders who will tell the public what's necessary, who will help to explain why, in fact, we need to have a presence on the ground in Afghanistan. So when you've got 3 presidents in a row having said we have to get out, I don't think
even President Bush was trying to find a way out, as we're now learning in an IG report.
I don't think that there's any question, but that we have to maintain, we needed to maintain a presence on the ground. 3,500 forces, counterterrorism operations, counterintelligence operations. That allowed us to have the kind of assurance that the Taliban would not, in fact, take over as they have done and create now a brand new safe haven. And again, it's not just the Taliban. It's the Haqqani network. It's al-Qaeda. You've got ISIS. You have, the very groups, particularly al-Qaeda, that attacked us 20 years ago from bases in Afghanistan, now back into a position where they can do the same again.
It does seem as if President Biden's going to pursue a strategy, a counterterrorism strategy that's similar to what both of the Obama and the Trump administration started to do late there, and how we go after enclaves in Syria and how we go after enclaves in Africa. Is that possible in Afghanistan?
No, right now, no. I mean, look, if you look at where we are today and you look at the damage that this decision has done, it's not just damage in Afghanistan, it's damage globally for the United States. Look at what the members of the British Parliament have been saying about us over the course of the last week. Look at what our NATO allies are saying about us, the arrangements they're now making, frankly, in some cases, excluding us. We have to, as a nation, recognize evil in the world. When you see mothers standing outside those gates handing their babies off, that's because they know the Taliban is evil. And as Americans, we have to say we must fight that and we must defend ourselves against future attacks.
But was nation building a step too far? I mean, was that, in some ways, I understand you have to build some institutions if you want to create that stability, but it didn't work. in Vietnam, it didn't work here.
Look, you have to build those institutions. I think that's exactly the point. And I think we have to be very specific. There's no question that there were mistakes, there were strategies that were pursued that didn't work, strategies that were pursued that didn't have the resources they needed. But for the United States to be in a position where we need to ensure Afghanistan is not a safe haven, that means that we've got to provide the support necessary to continue to have the Afghans bear the brunt of the fight. It means that we've got to help to build the institutions that can withstand, the Al-Qaeda and the Taliban threat that continues. So this isn't about building, a democracy that looks like the United States. It's about what can we do to maintain stability so that we don't have further terrorist attacks from Afghan soil.
Unfortunately, I'm out of time. Congresswoman Liz Cheney, I'd love to get you back here, talk a little bit about that January 6th committee that
look
you're working
forward to
on
it.
as well. Appreciate you coming on and sharing your
Thanks,
perspective
Chuck.
with us.
Great to be with you.
And when we come back, with COVID cases and hospitalizations spiking among children, the battle over whether there should be mask mandates in schools. Education Secretary Miguel Cardona joins me next. Welcome back. COVID cases remain on the rise in the United States, with the 7-day average of new cases now over 150,000. This is the highest weekly average we've had since the end of January. The increase is now accompanied by a spike among children and by a debate that comes with it over mask mandates in schools. The Republican governors of Florida, Texas, and Arizona have been actively fighting local mask mandates, but many of these school districts in those states are now deciding to defy those governors' bans. In Florida, for instance, Governor Ron DeSantis is threatening to cut school board salaries in the districts that voted for mask mandates. The U.S. Department of Education has since said the school districts may use other federal relief funds to replace that lost money. So joining me now is the Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona. Dr. Cardona, welcome to Meet the Press. And I want to start with a little bit of a logistics question about this, which is, you've said that these federal funds that have already been made available can be used to do this. How does a Broward County, Florida, or an Alachua County, Florida, go about getting that money if their own governor, usually the liaison between the states and the feds, is standing in the way? Can they actually access this money?
Yeah, so thank you for having me. And first and foremost, across the country, we have children returning to school, and we're excited about that, but we have to do everything in our power to keep them safe. I spoke to the superintendents of those two communities, and I let them know that we have their back. And yes, they can draw down on the funds that were promised to them so they can safely reopen schools.
Right, but how do they get that money? I mean, you guys get, because right. It's one thing to say you're going to do it, but again, if the state legislature and the state executive are not doing it, don't they control the purse strings here?
Not really. This was approved by Congress, so they do have access to federal funds that they can draw down at any moment to make sure that schools are opening safely and that our students and staff have the confidence of returning to in-person learning. They do not have to get the green light from the governor to use these funds. They're made available to them, and I called these superintendents personally to let them know that.
All right. You have an opposite problem in the state of Illinois. There are some local school districts that want to defy the state. In this case, this is the state governor there, Governor Pritzker, issuing a statewide mandate in schools, a mask mandate. Is there something the Department of Education is going to do to school districts that defy these mandate orders?
We know what works best. The president made it very clear in his memorandum. We need to do everything in our power at the Department of Education to allow safe reopening of schools. And what we're doing at the agency is working really closely with states, with local districts, and district leaders and our health experts to make sure that the message is clear. We know what works. We shouldn't be putting students at risk. So yes, we are involving ourselves in conversations with those leaders, with those elected officials, to make sure that student safety is at the top of the list.
This week, you and President Biden seem to talk about the idea of using your Office of Civil Rights as a way to investigate some of these cases as cases of discrimination if students essentially can't protect themselves due to these bans on mask mandates. So then what's the end game here? Is this a denial of federal funds at the end of this process? If it turns out you feel as if these districts essentially discriminated against kids that wanted to stay healthy?
At the end of the day, when we talk about withholding funds, those who suffer are the students. So we want to make sure that we're communicating with them. But as you noted, we are prepared to launch investigations with our Office for Civil Rights to ensure that all students have access to this fundamental right of education. And it's sad that we're talking about this now. We're going to use our Office for Civil Rights to investigate any claims that come forward to make sure that students' rights are kept. And we're also going to ensure that the funds are available to those districts that are doing the right thing to make sure students come in safely. Withholding funds doesn't usually work. If anything, it adds insult to injury to these students who are trying to get into the classroom. And to these parents who have told me repeatedly, I just want my children back in school. That's where they learn best. I've spoken to parents of students with disabilities, and I've spoken to students. I've spoken to athletes in the last week and a half, 2 weeks in Kansas and New York. They just want to go back to school safely. Let's get politics out of the way. Let the educational leaders and health experts make the decisions around how to keep students and staff safe.
I want to put up some statistics on our vaccination rates among different age groups. For adults, it's now over 62%. But for those 16 to 17, it's at 43%. And for those 12 to 15, it's at 34%. So we've talked about the penalty side of funding. How about sort of borrowing from the old race for the top idea, which is financial incentives to institutions to take federal dollars, whether in elementary schools or middle and high schools or on the higher education level? Is there an incentive program you can create to get a vaccine mandates in place?
Yes, we have been really beating that drum a lot. I mean, we've been traveling across the country, talking to governors, both Republican and Democrats, who are working with us to set up pop-up vaccination clinics in high schools. I visited one in Washington, D.C. recently. I visited one in Kansas recently. We know what works, and we're engaging educators to do this. And let me remind everyone, we have in the American Rescue Plan $130 billion available to districts to set up these vaccine clinics, to set up the testing clinics, to build confidence in our school reopening plans. We have the Return to School roadmap that has step-by-step direction on how to get this done. So it's all hands on deck. We do know vaccinations work. And in those communities where the vaccine numbers are higher, we're seeing more success. Unfortunately, in those places that they're using politics to block good practice, we're seeing hospitalizations through the roof for young children. That's unacceptable. We can control that. Let's get our kids back in school where they belong.
Right, but are you going to try to get a vaccine mandate on college campuses by basically saying if you take federal funds, you got to have a mandate on campus?
The federal government's role is very limited here. I do support efforts that are being done across the country to require vaccines on college campuses. I do support vaccine mandates in places where they're requiring staff and students to get it to go back. We don't have that authority, but I do support those efforts to keep students in school safely and prevent disruptions.
Dr. Cardona, the Secretary of Education, really appreciate you coming on and sharing the administration's perspective on this. Thank you. And when we come back, the political fallout from our withdrawal from Afghanistan. Panel is next. Welcome back. Panel is with us. NBC News Chief Washington Correspondent Andrea Mitchell, Leo Shane, Deputy Editor of Military Times, Stephen Hayes, the founder of The Dispatch, and Helene Cooper, Pentagon Correspondent for The New York Times. All right, I want to get to all of you. All of you are very well-sourced reporters, particularly in national security circles. Andrea, let me start with you. This ISIS threat, what Jake Sullivan is saying, even he seemed to open the door that if we need more troops, the president's open to that. It tells me that it's a dangerous situation.
A dangerous situation, and I think that you're going to see after today's meeting, they may well be putting more troops in because you do have the terror threat. They cannot do what the president said on Friday that they're going to do, is guarantee that they're going to get all Americans out and our Afghan allies. And when you think of all the hundreds of thousands of people, if not millions of people, the women, the children, as well as the human rights activists and others, the people who've been in education, in the orchestra, in other Taliban banned activities, they've got targets on their back, and we're not even talking about getting them out. It just seems to me that the fundamental issue is closing Bagram, no matter what they say, closing Bagram, because that broke the will, the air cover that the Afghan Defense Force, criticizing the Afghan Defense Force, Leon Panetta and others saying they lost 75,000 people. They were real fighters. But once they saw us gone, once they saw Bagram closed, then they knew that why wouldn't you flip sides if the Taliban were threatening to kill your wife and children?
Helene, I want to unpack Pentagon is your beat here. everybody here, I think, in this table has the Pentagon as their beat these days. But it was the military that said close Bagram first? That's what Jake Sullivan seemed to indicate, that they followed military advice on that decision.
There's a lot of blame shifting going on at this point. President Biden wanted the optic of the American military leaving Afghanistan. When he announced in April that we were withdrawing, he was talking about the military. The military will say that you can't withdraw and stay at Bagram. You're either going to withdraw or you stay. And they had been pushing for us to stay for, as we know, 20 years now. And so there's so many different layers of sort of finger pointing that are that you see starting to go on at the moment. But the one thing that I feel like this whole conversation on Afghanistan constantly doesn't reckon with is what some people in the military would call the original sin, and that is the decision that President Biden made that withdrawing 3,500 troops from Afghanistan, rejecting the advice of his defense secretary and his chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff to leave 3,000 to 4,500 people there, was not going to lead to the insane chaos that we are seeing now. A lot of people at the Pentagon believe that there's no way you would have gotten, once you make that decision, how do you then avoid this? Because every other way that you look around, you take the diplomats out first, that triggers the fall of the government. Right. You start taking out the SIVs, that triggers the fall of the government. It all becomes a confidence thing. Once you remove the military, people at the Pentagon will tell you you're done for.
So Bagram should have been the last place we evacuated.
I mean, it certainly seems that way now, right? I mean, sending U.S. troops back into the Kabul airport, trying to reestablish all of this, I mean, it just results in this chaotic environment. And look, there's still a situation where this comes out well for the president because he is the one who withdrew because they did this. But everything is focused now on the evacuation effort and just how bungled that appears. And, you know, we're 9 days away from this August 31st deadline. There's no way that it gets less chaotic over the next 9 days. It's just going to get worse.
As Richard reported, it's a rush for the exits.
Yeah, I think that's the key point. I mean, what we're seeing right now seems to be, I mean, it's been catastrophic, I would say, for the last week. And it's striking to me that when you talk to Jake Sullivan, when you listen to President Biden, they are in effect saying, yeah, this went the way that we thought it would go, which I find
we should have gotten
extraordinary,
out.
Extraordinary thing. And look, President Biden, in his remarks on Friday, said three things that were demonstrably, provably untrue. Al-Qaeda is gone from Afghanistan. That's not true. We haven't been criticized by our allies. That's not true. Americans can make it to the airport without being harassed. That's not true. I mean, he seems to have lost touch with reality, and that's a huge problem.
People are saying every day, look, our allies are furious. And here he went to Brussels and said, America is back, and I'm not Donald Trump, and I'm not going to pull the rug out from under you, as Trump did in Syria. And now they feel that the rug was pulled out from under them. You hear criticism from the Brits, from Germany, from France, and that is really hurting American position overseas. And these cables, the dissent memo and these cables now from the Afghan employees at the State Department we got in the last 24 hours are devastating. We have destroyed morale that he was rebuilding. I mean, it is a real problem for America's leadership abroad.
What I find so interesting about all of this is for 20 years, Joe Biden has believed that he knew more about Afghanistan, and he was the only realistic skeptic in a room full of people who had pipe dreams about this. It was 2009 Biden. Yes. But he was when he was on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. That was the very same thing. The first interview I ever had as a foreign policy reporter with Joe Biden was back in, 2005 or something, and I sat in his office and he went through the Joe Biden, this is the world according to Joe Biden, and all of these places we were. And that's exactly the problem, because he came in and he was not going to listen. He believed the Pentagon had rolled a successive number of administrations for 20 years, and he was going to stand up to them.
But then how are they unprepared for when April rolled around? When he announces the withdrawal, it seems like there was no actual plan for what he had been planning for the whole time. How do they not have some?
Because they thought they could talk him out of it. You had Joe Dunford with a congressional panel in February saying you should not take out the 3,500. All of the military advice was that, and they thought, and Lloyd Austin did try to fight back. You know that. But the fact is, he still is the Joe Biden of 2009, who was the only one on the national security team who didn't want the surge.
I can't believe I'm going to do this to you guys here.
Bob Gates criticized him in his book about it, and he now says, I knew better.
Isn't David Axelrod, didn't he nail this in Friday's New York Times when he said this? The way it's ending, this is David Axelrod, longtime senior advisor to the Obama-Biden team. The way it's ending, at least thus far, is more problematic and cuts against some of the core perceived strengths: competence, mastery of foreign policy, supreme empathy. It's as if his eagerness to end the war overran the planning and execution.
I mean, I think that's why this sticks. And we should also note, this is a dangerous moment. You have people talking about the Haqqani network, Al-Qaeda-linked Haqqanis taking security in Kabul. It could get worse quickly.
The American public either not seeing it or compartmentalizing it. And that's, I know, we got more. You guys have more time. When we come back, the divided states of America. Is there anything that we all agree on? Stick with us. Welcome back, Data Download Time. I want to dig in a little bit more into our poll to show you just how divided we are as a country, and you'll see how polarized we are by party. First, we'll look at the president's job approval rating. I showed you as sort of this middling 49-48. We'll look at it by party. 88% of Democrats approve, 88% of Republicans disapprove. Polarized result, well, guess what? It's the same almost across the board, whether we're talking about Biden's handling of the economy, basically an even split there, 47-49. Very much partisan doesn't budge on this one. His personal rating, 43-44. Again, the big overly positive Democrats, overly negative Republicans. I can go down the line. Even the idea of a vaccine requirement in this country splits along very polarized lines. 48% favor, 50% oppose. Congressional preference. Who do you want to control Congress? Starting to look familiar. 47 Democrat, 46 Republican. Again, very polarizing. There's one small group of voters that make the polls move, and I want to show you who they are. They're hardcore independents. This is less than 15% of our sample. They're the only people that seem to be moved by events. President Biden's job approval in April among independents, 61, now 46. On the economy, it dropped 15 points. On handling of COVID, it dropped a whopping 30 points. On congressional preference, you saw a swing of 15 points. The point is, these are the only voters in America that are actually moved by public events. What's happening in the administration? This group of independents, that's who's going to decide who's in charge of our politics for the next couple of years. When we come back, how this political divide is now keeping us from agreeing on whether kids should be masked in school. Stay with us. Welcome back. So, what do Americans care more about, COVID or what we're seeing in Afghanistan? I want to show you something, guys. We asked people to tell us what the number one issue was that they want Congress to focus on. Here's the Democratic word cloud here. The biggest response, something having to do with economy and jobs. Number two, COVID and the coronavirus. If I have a magnifying glass, you could not find Afghanistan on here. That's among Democrats. Among Republicans, the number one issue, economy and jobs. Number two is immigration and the border. You don't see anything having to do with Afghanistan. COVID, I circled up here up top, kind of small on that front. You know, Steve Hayes, is what's happening on COVID, it's a wet blanket on President Biden right now. Are some of these Republican governors playing with fire down south?
Yeah, I think they could be, because there's an intellectual inconsistency with some of the arguments they're making. I mean, Republicans have long made the argument that the government that does best is the government that's closest to the people. And now you have Republicans saying, in effect, we're going to make decisions at the state level. To hell with all of the localities. I think that's a hard decision to make. A hard decision to both enforce and a hard decision to defend when you're looking at this. Look, the part of the problem here is negative polarization, right? I mean, it has become part of the Republican identity, I think driven by President Trump and his time at the White House, to be skeptical of COVID, to be skeptical of the effects, to be skeptical of the treatments, to be skeptical of the vaccines. Now, you've had President Trump say, I hope people go get vaccinated.
Right.
And he's getting booed for it, which is just extraordinary. Right. It shows how this has kind of taken momentum on its own.
And this polarization, Leo's impacting the military. I mean,
Yeah.
and good luck instituting this vaccine mandate, right?
Well, I mean, we'll see. I mean, the military has fallen in line in the past when they've told these things. We're supposed to get FDA approval of one of the vaccines tomorrow, so that'll ease some of the transition here. But look, there is still a lot of friction. There's still a lot of folks who don't trust it and don't want it, and we are seeing some pockets of that. You know, it remains to be seen when the military actually pushes forward here what it'll be. VA has also instituted most of their frontline health workers are going to have to get vaccines. I'm hearing from folks saying they'll quit before they do that. We'll see if they actually do.
What's so dramatic and startling, really, and not surprising, but startling in the poll numbers, is the decline since April in the effectiveness, the job approval on COVID, on handling COVID for the president, which was a high point for him, and well done in the way they rolled out the vaccines. And yes, they couldn't have anticipated Delta and how bad it has been, but just how polarized the country is to reject vaccines. There are people in the South taking horse deworming medication, not the vaccines, but horse deworming medication for COVID because they heard about it on another network from two prominent anchors, like hydroxychloroquine. I mean, how crazy do you have to be? So they're calling poison control because they're taking this crazy thing for COVID and killing themselves or getting themselves sick. But they won't take what will actually, prevent at least serious illness and hospitalization.
You know, Helene, Andrea brought up the COVID issue for President Biden, and this is where, to sort of how it connects to Afghanistan, is it gets to the competency issue, which is if you see chaos here, and then all of a sudden it's going to make people question, well, you've been giving us these reassurances over here. I mean, this is how the whole thing starts to collapse.
Yeah. I think that President Biden, he got very deserved credit for the vaccine rollout. But the idea, though, I would disagree with the idea that he didn't see Delta coming. He saw it coming. I think the White House saw it was in the UK. The Delta variant kind of spread in many, many places before it got here. And we heard as early as April that this was something that was going to be the dominant strain.
You know, he mentioned it in his Declaration of Independence remarks.
Yeah.
He actually did mention Delta.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
So
it is this
like,
on again. On one hand, he was declaring our independence, and on the other hand, he's like, oh, by the way, this might be a problem. But it wasn't really.
This is still a lot of making policy on the fly, and you could argue he has not taken some of the more dramatic steps that he could take in light of the Delta variant and the surge there. And again, you have these people on both sides of the aisle, but a lot of them on the right who won't touch the vaccine.
I would just say, in defense, it is that who would have anticipated such a large cohort, 19 million Americans unvaccinated, because it really is spreading because of the unvaccinated.
Yes, absolutely.
They're absolutely correct about that. It's just, amazing.
But aren't there things that we could do to force people to get vaccines? Like, what if you did a domestic flight vaccine mandate for domestic flights? You can't get on a plane. Sure, people aren't catching COVID on airlines, but that would certainly prod a lot of people into getting vaccination.
That becomes the question with the schools here at this point, which is, do they have a mandate? Does something come? Does something force them to take a mandate?
I will say this, a ton of politicians staring at something that has 60% approval have been afraid to go down the mandate road, which is fascinating to me. That's all we have for today. Thank you for watching. Get vaccinated if you haven't gotten vaccinated. We'll be back next week because if it's Sunday, it's Meet the Press.